I don't want to call it bias, but once again, TNA has provided me with something fantastic between the weirdness of Raw and will Becky Lynch just re-sign with the company? Who knows? Also, Sexy Red made her appearance on NXT, and Shawn Michaels. I am gonna say this again, like I said on the review. What in the world were you on when you said, "Hey, you know what? Let's get Sexy Red to show up"? I'm like, I mean, I'm not mad at it because it ended up being entertaining, but there's lots of questions. Dynamite, you were also weird. Ring of Honor, you disappointed me like a stepchild. But once again, TNA delivered this week for the most part, though I also have questions about the directions we are heading to,
Mhm.
and I'm just going to bury the lead here. We are going to talk about this weird crossover that TNA and NXT are apparently involved in too, which was nuts. But, we are here for another Takedown Troop review, your weekly TNA wrestling review team. We're supposed to have a trio, but now it's just a duo for tonight. Will, I'm ashamed of you. No, I'm just kidding. Love you. But I am one of your hosts, Mikey, also known as El Jefe. I am the man with half of the plan and the face that kind of runs the place. And joining me this evening is my other lovely co-host. You know him, you love him here on TNA and Ring of Honor, and maybe CMLL down the road, but who knows? We'll talk about all that in the future. We'll see with all that. But Andrew, if it's not you, it's Will. I can never get the three of us to be together again on the review, but I'm happy to have you here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bummer that he couldn't be here, but glad to be here.
Yeah, I am excited to talk about this TNA. So let's just get started. So we open up with the will they won't they match because I was full on expecting. I was like, thank you TNA for not doing what every wrestling trope when a tag team fights each other in a singles match. But we had Ace Austin taking on Chris Bay. These two have some differences to work out because they've been kind of in a slump, in a losing streak. And this all stems from, they got things that they need to settle in the ring and figure out if they're going to continue to be a tag team. Spoiler alert, pretty sure they're going to stay a tag team, especially when we get to a certain Miss Jordan Grace appearing somewhere else because there are possibilities. And we'll save that for this. But honestly, this was a nice, like 10, 12-minute bout. And I mean, I knew I was going to like this. Ace Austin's great. Chris Bay is also Chris Bay. But this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed this. This had everything that I wanted, that I know that both of them could do. And it was nice to see them kind of, even though they were fighting each other and they're still a tag team, it was nice to see them kind of get back into singles action because it just proves they're good as single stars and as a tag team too.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this was a phenomenal match as always with these two. My biggest thing is now that we didn't have like an attack afterwards or anything like that, it seems to be like reluctantly they're going to move forward and hopefully be done with this. I want to see what's next. So I want to see where we go with this for both of these guys. It was a really good match, but I mean we've kind of expected that from them.
It's nice when you know that your talent is capable to put on good matches and then they deliver on those things. I'm looking at you other promotions this week because y'all, it was rough, Andrew. I was like, it was rough. We had to navigate everything to get here.
I know.
Though I am excited to talk about Collision, but that's for a whole different review. But Chris Bay and Ace Austin, they worked out their differences. They got, they relieved some stress, if you want to use that phrasing. Don't take it out of context, internet. But it seems that now that they kind of worked out what needed to be done, I am interested to see what direction we head into with them, as you said, Andrew. And hopefully it's fighting other tag teams because we need more tag teams in this division right now. But, you know, depending on certain things that happen at Against All Odds, we may or may not see a refresher in the tag team division. We'll get to there when we get there. So from that match, we just jump into a next one. No explanation, no chaser. Like we didn't waste no time because next we get our first knockouts match. Well, our first knockout sighting. This was really the only knockouts match we got. But this was not the only time we saw the knockouts division. We had Miss Zaya Brookside taking on the powerhouse Python herself, Steph DeLander. I am happy to see that Steph has decided to stick around a little bit longer too, which is really, really nice. And Nothing has been confirmed yet, but I would love to see her be signed to TNA. But this just was a match to have the match. Zaya is coming off with her feud with Ash by Elegance, which she knocked her out a couple weeks ago with the rings. And, when I talked to Miss Ash by Elegance about it, you know, that feud is over. She's got her rings back. Go check out that review, shameless plug, interview too. Yeah, Zaya takes on Steph. This match went about the way that I thought. Steph is manhandling Zaya at this point. And as she goes for a chair, who should be attached to said chair but Mr. PCO? The monster does have a heart after all, or so it seems. Because then, because of all the shenanigans, Zaya ends up getting the most devastating move in professional wrestling, the surprise roll up, to pin Steph DeLander and win. Normally, I hate distractions like this, and I usually get upset about it. But because of how stupid and camp the story is going on with PCO and Steph, I kind of can overlook it because I was like, this is stupid wrestling. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this match, it was kind of like we talked about in our last review, was this match was to set up what happened at the end. It felt like at certain points it wasn't being picked up as quick as it could have, and it took a little while to get to the payoff. I mean, it was fun. There was a lot of fun parts to it, but it was like there was too much air in between all of the parts. Certain things could have just happened faster. But I will say my favorite part was watching Zaya's face reactions, watching what was happening between Steph and PCO in the ring.
I love that she stayed for that whole interaction. She's just like, yeah, I love Zaya. I don't know where we're going with PCO and Steph. I don't care though, because he literally gave her a love letter and she's like, ooh, it's like the kombucha meter is like, do I like this? I guess, I liked it. Well, never mind. Like going back and forth whether Steph likes this or not. You know what? If anybody who has paid attention to the Queen of the Death match with her and Matt Cardona and independent scene, the campiness works for Steph. Like she thrives in campiness. And it's actually really nice to see her kind of play into it a lot. Steph is great. I love her so much. I'm excited to see where PCO and Steph's romance question mark goes. Will Steph be the one to show PCO the world of emotions and feelings? Oh, it's gonna be great when this monster gets a heart and what dynamic that happens. It's
Until
camp. I
it
love
gets
it.
broken.
That's probably what's gonna end up happening. Steph is gonna break PCO's heart. I'm gonna be very sad, but in a weird way, I'm kind of looking forward to it because again, not every feud, not every storyline needs to be serious. Sometimes we just need good old camp. This is exactly what it is. And I am loving that PCO at this stage of his career, as old as he is, he's still finding ways to make this character very fun and interesting. I love it. It's fantastic. All right. So, Andrew, strap in because we're going to let the floodgates open with this one. We get a recap video of another promotion on TNA. What? Oh, this was nuts. So, for those of you who have not been following the wrestling news in the last couple of days, as someone who reviews NXT, and Andrew, who was a part of that team for a very long time, can also speak on this too. We get a recap package. NXT, which is part of WWE's big universe of wrestling, brands and things like that. Their women's champion, Roxanne Perez, is set to face an unnamed opponent at the next pay-per-view, which is happening next week for NXT at Battleground. General manager Ava tells Roxanne that her opponent is the following person. And even though I've already seen this before, it still boggles my mind that Roxanne will be facing the TNA Knockouts champion, Jordynne Grace. So we get the recap video of Jordynne cutting a promo to Roxanne and introducing herself to anybody who's not familiar with her in NXT. Now, the video package itself was just a quick recap of what happened, but what me and Andrew are here to talk about is all the subsequent news that has flooded the internet, just hours and days after that happened live on TV. We're getting news reports, according to Fightful and other outlets, that TNA and NXT are going to be working together a lot. which in the weird way makes sense because both of them are part of the TKO umbrella, which is real, an Anthem and all that, which is kind of nutty to think about. We also hear that there may be crossovers with TNA stars at Battleground, and it seems that we're going to be getting some NXT stars for Against All Odds. It is literally not the forbidden door, but to coin the phrase that JVO gives us, the proverbial portal, if you will, NXT and TNA are going to be crossing over. However, we also do need to report that there was some kind of worrying stuff that certain, behind the scenes, there were people that, resigned, got let go, though no names have been mentioned yet, and nothing of the sort of that includes any talent. But Andrew, just when we thought that TNA was doing great and is safe, I want to be cautiously optimistic. But with everything that is going on in WWE right now, with a certain lawsuit that is also happening with the former person, CEO, all that good stuff. All right, where do we want to? Let's start with Jordan versus Roxanne. How did we get here? Like, I'm excited, but I'm like, I was not ready for this.
I mean, it's funny because we've been seeing Jordan defend her title against people from other promotions because she's basically run through all the competitors in her promotion. So it's just weird to see her on the other side. I think there could be incredible matchups between NXT and TNA talent specifically. There's a lot of people in there that could have some incredible matches. My biggest concern with this is that since WWE for certain is not going to let their title go to someone in another company, that we're sending Jordan over there for an obvious loss. That being said, it could be an incredible matchup, and as much as I am not a follower of WWE, I think of a lot of the places that Jordan could go if she was treated well and how she should be handled, character-wise, in-ring wise, performance-wise, booking and all that. WWE actually makes a lot of sense for her, both NXT and WWE. She's got the powerhouse look, style, all that stuff that they really, have a history of. There's a lot of people there that could make phenomenal opponents for her. So getting to see her have some of those chances is pretty cool. Getting to see some of the NXT stars get a chance to face people that are completely outside the realm of people they would have been able to face even just a few days ago, that we knew of. Yeah, I mean, it's super cool, but I feel like this is one of those awesome match, but we know the champion's going to retain. Yeah.
Yeah, and not to spend too much time on this, but I want to reiterate a point that Will and I made during our NXT review this past week, a couple days ago. As much as I'm excited for Jordan versus Roxanne, because in-ring wise, Jordan can go. We know Roxanne outside of, Lyra and Blair Davenport, those before they got put up to main roster, those are the three I would go to be like, these girls have years of experience. Like literally they are the top of your division. Now that Lyra and Blair are on main roster, Roxanne's the only one left, and we know she can go. She was the inaugural ROH Women's Champion.
Mm-hmm.
That because lest we forget, that Women's Championship has only been around since 2018, I believe. So it's still fairly new, and it took them years to do that. Shout out to Maria Kanellis for getting all that started and getting that women's division for ROH. She doesn't get a lot of credit for that, but
that's crazy that Athena's had it for almost 2 years of that belt's existence.
Seriously, not a lot of women have held that title. It's been Athena and Roxanne or Roxy as she went by in ROH, Mercedes, Deanna, like a very handful of women have held that title. But as Will and I stated, as much as we're excited for the match itself, for me as a person who covers NXT and also loves the talent in NXT and someone who is very protective of TNA because of how much we love the talent, this match, as excited as I am, is a lose-lose situation for me because it makes me sad that Jordan is more than likely going to lose this match, which sucks. But on the other hand, if they pull a swerve and Jordan somehow walks out as NXT Women's Champion, it's also a lose for me too, because once again, Roxanne is getting the short end of the stick. We had the similar issue with her first title reign, and if she loses the title to Jordan, while it'll be a good viral moment and a shock factor, I feel that it hurts any momentum Roxanne has, especially since she's trying to get this heel character. I still think, and I can say this, but I think that whenever she's ready, if Roxanne's going to lose to anyone, I still think that Cora Jade is the one to take that title off of Roxanne because we still have yet to resolve that feud due to countless injuries on both parties. But here's hoping. But again, Jordan Grace, I will say though, between her Rumble appearance, which by the way, we're gonna find a way to make that a meme and put it on the internet at the end of our year review to show it on our final episode of the year for the podcast. Because me and Andrew were like little schoolgirls screaming our lungs out when she made that entrance because nobody was expecting that. But I love that Jordan is getting all this shine in different media outlets. And honestly, if I have to pick a current knockout in the knockouts division to be like
Mhm.
the face of the women's division in TNA, Jordan Grace is definitely the
Yep.
right pick for that one. But, me and Will be covering Battleground as the last thing we do for on-air reviews for NXT. Though I will be doing short, like 5-minute reviews just for social media with NXT because now the floodgates have opened and we shall see what happens with all of that. But
I
Jordan, we
mean,
love you. That match is going to be great.
TNA might be the fourth brand before we know it. So
I'm gonna call out JVL because I wasn't on my A game during the ROH review, but I'm like, sir, don't put that out in the universe because I want to keep TNA to myself, but also I cannot be in the way of progress because if this allows opportunities for our TNA roster to have matchups against people that never did in my wildest dreams that I think was possible, I don't want to stand in the way in that. I just want them to be protected because they're like my children. Yeah. God, I sound like the internet. Ugh. All right, we're gonna move on from that. But all right, so we get a backstage segment. Laredo Kid gets like 5 words in before he gets interrupted with First Class, who then proceed to beat this poor man down. And Andrew, I don't know if this you felt the same way about this, but after the beatdown, this telegraphed to me. I'm like, oh yeah, AJ's winning this title next week.
oh yeah,
I'm like,
I
bro,
yeah. No, I when I saw the graphic for this like weeks ago that AJ was going to be facing the Laredo Kid before we even like started seeing any machinations of that like on like in the actual product. I was like, no, AJ Francis is winning that title. They're putting it on him. Sucks for Laredo Kid, but I honestly think for the Digital Media Championship, it actually will boost it. AJ Francis makes sense. His style, his character, his what he does outside of the ring all makes sense for a Digital Media Championship. And even though he's not the most popular, he's got a good amount of heat on him. And I think you can put him in there with that title and with Rich Swann and anybody else he brings in to help him keep that title for a while and really build up that division. So I'm not going to be surprised, but it does going to suck for Laredo Kid to be that transitional champion.
yeah, and it just makes me sad because again, I go back to the interview he had with Tom Hannafan. I was like, oh, you know what? I dig Laredo Kid a lot more. Oh, he beat Crazy Steve. All right, I could get down with this. And then when I saw that again, when I saw the graphic and then I saw this, I was like, yeah, somebody had to be a transitional champion. It just sucks that it had to be our luchador. All right, but in the grand scheme of things, the Digital Media Championship being in AJ Francis' hands actually is fine with me because if he goes the same way that Matt Cardona did by just being skeevy with the title and just like to be disrespectful with it to other people, it works. Which then would be interesting because that would mean that Jordan is the only face champion we have in TNA, which is crazy right now.
Yeah.
I
And
foresee a lot of titles changing hands in the next 2 pay-per-views. I'm just putting it out there.
oh, yeah.
But we cut from this backstage segment to another backstage segment. We see Khan yelling up a storm looking for Santino, and he happens to run into Jake Something and Diener. Ultimately, these two have an argument, which sets up a match for next week. Khan is going to be taking on Jake Something. Again, this is our Haas match of the week for next week, which has me excited. However, the only other thing that happened in this promo is that Khan tells Jake that he needs to not listen to Diener because he knows what that's like and doesn't go anywhere. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Diener and Khan used to be in the same faction. So we're finally addressing those things. Look, am I excited for the match? Yes. Did this further any plot line for either three of these individuals? No, not really. Because I'm like, are we oh okay, sure. I feel like the storylines we were involved in kind of just like, all right, we're gonna throw you guys out of those and this is where we're going next. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that was my question. Was like, what are we doing with these guys? Like, what's
How do
happening?
you go from taking Jake to be in the X Division Championship picture, and then for the last couple of weeks, this is where he's gone?
Yeah, I think. I mean, honestly, I think it's frustrating to me because I feel like they're wanting to give Ali as many challengers as possible. I think the better use of Jake would have been giving him a feud with Ali, like a long term feud. And,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they could have made it to where Jake is constantly trying to get that title shot, maybe he has one and he's trying to get it, trying to get it honored, but Ali keeps offering, title shots to other people to keep Jake out of the contention. And you just extend that a little bit because I felt like that was such a great way to, whenever it is that Ali was going to lose that title, to have Jake take it off of him because it made sense. And it would have been a great moment for Jake as well. Now it just feels like, it feels like we've stepped back even worse than when they were the Deaners and, they were that tag team. Like now it feels like, oh, we're going to go back to this, but you've gone back to something that's already outdated. So now it works even less, especially because it felt like we had Jake turn on Diener and shut him down, but then they became friends. But now it seems like that's going to happen again.
We got to
I,
stop
I,
flip flopping here.
I don't know. The only thing I can think is that Jake is going to just beat up Diener so bad that Diener's going to snap out of this like good guy thing and go back to being, dark and evil and twisted or whatever the case is. The most interesting thing out of this is a match between Jake and Colin should be good. Outside of that, you could have just had the match. Like we didn't need any of this.
You bring up a good point when it comes to Diener. I I think that they need to pick a lane for Jake something. Either let him be a little more heelish or continue to have him as his face, but you cannot keep having him go back and forth. I wouldn't even call Jake a tweener right now, like because he keeps going to both extremes, but he can't find a middle ground. And again, I'm not trying to compare wrestlers because everyone is different, but I think a perfect example is someone who rides that line because they've been able to figure out character wise how they want to portray it, and also booking kind of helps them, but mostly the talent understands their character is someone like Swerve Strickland. And I think Swerve does an excellent job, especially in this current run, of being able to find that line between, technically he's more heel than he is face, but because the crowd is so behind him, he's able to ride that line where he can be a heel and use heel tactics, but the people love him and he's leaning more towards that. I feel that if we get something like that for Jake, where he's able to find a way to ride that line between face and heel, I think that would TNA would have a very hot commodity on their hand because between Jake's wrestling skills, his size, his personality, and if he's able to find that, I honestly think he'd be great. Or if you wanted to go the opposite route, I do believe that Jake is going to beat up Diener again so badly that Diener's going to snap. But I actually don't want to see Diener go back to being a heel. But I would like him to go from a good guy gimmick to being an anti-hero kind of thing, where he's just like, you're kind of a turd. Let's just fight and just literally be a Nightwing for TNA. Like, or even a Red Hood. You know what? That's a better example. Diener can be the Red Hood for TNA. Just vigilante, just does what he needs to do, have a bit of an edge, but also know that he's not going to cross the line if he doesn't need to.
Yeah, I think for Jake, realistically, what they need to do is they just need to make him a monster. Not that he's a heel, not that he's a face. He's not out there cheating. He's not out there like going after the bell or anything like that. But in the match, when he faces his opponents, he's just a monster. And he's not going to take crap from anybody, and let him be that way. He'll still be super popular with the fans, but he'll also have that air of like, who's going to stop this guy? But yeah, I don't know. Right now, it just feels like they don't know what the end result is going to be, or even what they want it to be. So it just kind of comes off kind of flat.
Look, All I'm saying is Tommy Dreamer, Gail Kim, like we're free, call us. No, I trust Gail and Tommy's vision for what they have for their roster, but I think there just needs not even a complete change, just some things need to be tweaked with Jake and Diener in order for it to kind of work better. But
Mhm.
I am excited for the match between Jake and Khan next week. Your Haas match is set for next week, and I'm kind of excited. So we shall see what happens with all that. Okay, so now we got through all those two backstage segments. So let's get into, do we even want to call Sami Callihan a, like, I guess you know what? I'll call him like a horror character as well, just in the more like Purge and the Neighbors vein, whereas Jonathan Gresham is literally Cthulhu incarnate. But we get Sami Callihan versus Jonathan Gresham. I was thoroughly entertained with what we got. Not necessarily the cleanest when it comes to wrestling, but then
Yeah.
again, when you have a technician like Jonathan Gresham going up against, I don't even want to say like hardcore style of Sami
It
Callihan,
is.
but he fights more like a brute than a technician. But I was entertained with the story we were getting this whole entire time. Also, shout out to the little details because the ref had to wear a mask and gloves. So from here on out, anytime Jonathan Gresham is wrestling, the refs have to wear gloves and masks in order to not get infected with the Cthulhu-esque spew, if you will. I'm going to be honest. I thought they were going to put Sammy over, but I'm pleasantly surprised that they let Jonathan win. They had Jonathan win here. I'm more interested to see how the ink affects Sami Callihan, who's already just kind of nuts to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, all in all, the match was okay for me. It kind of bothers me that this version of Gresham is taking so much of a beating in all of his matches. I thought with what we were getting, he was going to come in and be more dominant, and instead it's more like he gets beat up and then comes back from it. It also doesn't feel like he's like a monster or like a dark force, but more instead that he's like kind of cheating and, kind of like using underhand tactics instead of being this like dark force. It wasn't what I expected from it. I thought we were going to see a much more dominant, much more evil Jonathan Gresham, and it feels more like we're getting just more heelish Jonathan Gresham, who's just wearing, different gear. I too am interested to see what the long term story of the ink is going to be, but I'd like to see him, because we know he can be a dominant performer. I'd like to see that actual come into play. I'd like to see him combine more of his, technical grappling with some more of the like darker stuff. I also feel like the whole ink thing, I would have liked to have seen that more as like a mist type thing, to where it's not like he uses it in his finisher. So it's like he spits it into his hand and then puts it into someone's mouth. Like I feel like that's the kind of stuff like you would get disqualified for, but he's not, and so it's just really kind of off for me. So I'll have to see where they're going to go with this, because I was super interested when we got the promo packages setting all of this up.
Yeah, initially when we got this version of Gresham, I thought he was going to go the route of like the Great Muda,
Mm-hmm.
Asuka, and there's one other person that does that. But anyways, I thought he was going to go the route and spit the ink at the opponent, and that's how we get this. I just feel that because Jonathan Gresham is all intents and purposes, at least to me, kind of like a wrestling version of like the Cosmic Horror Cthulhu in that same vein. I don't know how TNA would pull it off, but I feel that there are more ways that could align with the mysticism of Cosmic Horror that they can lean into. And again, we're just starting out with this gimmick, so who knows how this can evolve into everything. But in a weird way, like the way that Jonathan Gresham has been using the ink hasn't been clicking with me. But like in the backstage stuff, like the very psychological horror things, like just last week when we got that vignette with Santino calling Jonathan Gresham in a dimly lit room, I was like, yeah, this is great. Like this is how it should be. And I'm not saying I love the character, I love its design and everything. I love the kind of lore behind it because I think it's fascinating and it's quite different than anything else in professional wrestling that's happening at the moment. I'm just hoping that if it's not Jonathan and creative or maybe both, that we figure out a way to utilize the ink a little bit differently. because I think it's a cool idea. It's just the execution has not necessarily been the best. What I am hoping though is if this does continue to thing, I'm hoping that this gives Gresham and Sammy the chance to do something different. Because I love
Hmm.
Sammy Callahan. I'm a thumbs up, thumbs down guy myself. I love him. But I'm hoping that now that he's come back in TNA that we can evolve that because otherwise it's going to get stale. And I love
Yeah.
Sammy, but his character has been the same every time he's been in TNA.
Yeah.
So here's hoping we evolve. Speaking of evolving, Gail Kim sits
Hmm.
down with Jazelle Shaw, which, by the way, shout out to you ladies. You both look great. Shout out to Gail, who's still my favorite female wrestler on the planet, the best women's wrestler of all history. Fight me on that one. But I really like this quasi somewhat babyface Jazelle Shaw, it seems that we might be getting, because in this interview, Gail helps Jazelle walk through, everything. She won the Ultimate X. The last time we saw her was at No Surrender back in February, where she challenged Jordan Grace for the title and lost. And that loss hurt her in more ways than one. And then, she acknowledges the implosion of the Shantarage. And then she, without giving too many details, she was also going through physical injuries and also
Hmm.
dealing with a lot of mental, mental things that were happening in her life. Just her mindset was not in a good place. But she had, Jazelle admitted that she feels like now she's starting at ground zero. And
Yeah.
Gail tells her that that's a good place to start. And now, not the quintessential diva, but what does Jazelle Shaw want for her? And Gail Kim says, if you trust me, I promise you will find your answer. And
Hmm.
Jazelle says to end the segment that she trusts Gail, and Jazelle is going to be returning on TNA television next week. I'm very fascinated of where this goes with Jazelle, and I'm excited. I've missed Jazelle because I think that she offers something different. But I'm interested to see what a face Jazelle looks like because haven't gotten that at all since Jazelle has been a part of this company.
Yeah. I mean, I'm here to see, a new twist on Giselle Shaw, and also see her with Gail as her kind of mentor, because I think that could bring a super interesting dynamic to it. And I like getting to see, you know, legends, if we'll call them that, come back as mentors, managers, whatever you want to, have them be, especially when it's not in a heel setup. We seem to get that much more in the heel realms. So it'd be kind of nice to kind of see her in that role.
I am never going to be opposed to see more Giselle. And honestly, if Gail starts to have more of an on-screen presence too, I'm also here for that as well. I know behind the scenes, Gail and Giselle are really close, so it's really cool to see that, hey, you know what? We actually get to see a real life friendship on this television screen. I'm excited. I'm happy to see Giselle back. And I'm excited to see what is going to be happening with her. So we go from this interview, and the system is just a mess backstage because they, everybody's got different things to worry about. Eddie Edwards, Brian Myers, and Alicia Edwards are, focusing on the match that Eddie has with Joe Hendry in our main event tonight. Moose is going to go off to find broken Matt Hardy and take him out. And, our poor backstage correspondent, Gia, is just trying to get everything together. And then she doesn't even get to interview the system. And then all of a sudden we get a random Frankie Kazarian sighting. Like, I was like, what? That's the biggest critique I have of this whole thing. I love that the system is in the mess, but Frankie was so out of place in this, just getting Gia to call him the king of TNA. I was like, Frankie, what are we doing with you? What is happening?
Yeah, it also came across kind of like, I don't know why, it came across really weird, kind of like abusery, kind of manipulative, kind of, it was just super like
Right? I was like,
this.
ew.
Last week, he was yelling at the woman ring announcer, backed up against the barricade. Now he's backstage with this, backstage commentator by herself, like basically intimidating her into like calling him by this name he wants to be called
It's
by,
creepy.
while also like dressing like a dude going through his like midlife crisis. It's super weird. Yeah.
I know Gia can probably handle herself. And I'm like, that's Mrs. Josh Alexander you're yelling at last week. So I'd be careful if I were you. But I'm pretty sure she can handle herself too. But yeah, I still want to give this character for Frankie Kazarian a chance, but it has gone from being a douchebag to being a very gross douchebag. And that we're starting to get into some lines that, for me personally and my personal experience, I'm just like, nope, we gotta throw up the X sign, we gotta throw the red card on the table because we're getting close to that kind of territory, and no bueno. I do not like it.
Yeah, let's see him do some stuff in the ring for this thing, not going chasing after commentators and announcers.
No. And I'm wondering how much of this is them trying to get Frankie TV time, but also because I feel that Eric Young losing his ear in the Full Metal Mayhem match at Rebellion probably kind of threw a lot of things out the window for right now, because I feel that we were probably going to get more of this feud, but the man lost his ear, so we kind of have to get that reconstructed and set in properly. So I'm pretty sure that's probably where we're going once Eric Young is fully healed. Also, I still couldn't find anything of how long Josh and Hammerstone are out, which is also really tough because I'm like, damn, you got three big time names, and they're all sitting on the shelf right now for who knows how long.
Yeah.
But they are doing the best they can to, make do with what they got, which I've been enjoying so far. But y'all know if they're ready, I'm ready for them to return at Slammiversary. It's going to be fantastic. But we're going to leave creepy Frankie Kazarian, and we're going to move on to a match that I was actually really excited for. I still don't know how I feel about the ending, but I'm not mad at it. But anyways, we get Steve Macklin versus Mike Santana. This is a rematch from Rebellion. This match, while not as crazy as their first one at Rebellion, I still thought these two were trying to murder each other, and it was fantastic for me to watch. Man, Steve Macklin just gives no F's when he does those suicide dives out into the, I'm like, Steve, you do realize that the barricade and the ring are shorter in distance than most other companies. But I thought this was a hard-hitting match. Steve Macklin channeling his inner, military experience, which shout out to Steve Macklin for his service, because TNA put out a special video on social medias during Memorial Day. So thank you, Steve, for everything. Mike Santana is New York gangsta. He's about to go thug on you. Literally LAX right here. I'm like, sir, this is one half of LAX, one of the best and craziest tag teams in TNA. And then the Rascals got involved, and at first I wanted to be mad. But then I sat there, I was like, you know what? The enemy of my enemy is my best friend kind of thing. I'm kind of here for Mike Santana and Steve hating each other's guts, but they hate the Rascals even more. So the Rascals are about to become cannon fodder, and I'm kind of here for it.
Yeah, I mean, the way that Santana moves is crazy, especially as bulked as he's gotten. And Macklin did a great job of keeping up with him. It was a super physical fight before the actual interference happened. And yeah, my first thought when I saw the interference with the Rascals happen was that we're going to probably be getting a Macklin and Santana versus the Rascals match at Against All Odds, which isn't what I would have guessed would have happened. It feels a little more fitting than when we got Kazarian and Macklin to team up, because I think it'll make sense if we get the two of them to team up to just beat the crap out of the Rascals, then going back to finish what they had. But I think it'll be a crazy match to see all four of them face each other. But yeah, I mean, it was fun before the interference. It was a good way to not finish off their rivalry so we can finish it later. And it makes the Rascals look dangerous too, because, while they may not be able to take them head on, with their style and tactics, they can go after even people like Macklin and Santana.
Yeah. And, I keep bringing this up. I don't know if it's because he's not fully signed. I was like, what happened? Whatever happened to Myron Reed? I know he's busy in GCW right now.
Yeah.
But,
I saw him wrestle a lot in GCW recently.
Yeah. By the way, just as a shameless plug, if y'all do not follow our social media, y'all need to do so, because this man right here, Andrew, is our official... Well, his unofficial title, but we're making him official now. He is going to be our GCW correspondent. So make sure you follow our social media. So every so often, Andrew is going to be doing the report cards for these shows that GCW does. And Andrew's doing great work. We're trying to expand here at BC WrestlePod, and Andrew has taken the responsibility to do GCW. And I am saying this on air. He knows this via behind the scenes, but I appreciate Andrew taking this initiative because it's adding to what we're trying to build here. So, Andrew, you have my thanks, my gratitude, and I like the report cards. They're fantastic.
I appreciate it.
But we go from this match, and Macklin and Santana are about to murder the Rascals on television at some point. We cut backstage with Spitfire and Mr. Frederickson over here. And basically, I actually really like this is how you use somebody like a managerial type of character, because he sets Jody threat straight. It's like, look, you lost the match. It is done. It is over with, but we got to learn from our mistakes. Danny, you're going to be facing Tasha. So you need to learn from Jody's mistakes because I got you this match. We need to get it together. And I'm like, I like Mr. Frederickson here being the more serious of the three and getting these girls to kind of channel their inner wild child, so to speak. I'm here for this development for the Spitfire because I think Jody and Danny Luna as a team are fantastic. And I like that we have a manager that is actually, this is the only other manager character we have outside of Mr. Paul Heyman in another promotion. And I kind of like the addition of Carl Frederickson here with all this stuff. So we'll see. But my only critique is like, damn, Tasha's not even getting any screen time, and we're kind of just getting her into matches with Spitfire. I was like, we ain't gonna have a promo from Tasha. Give me my Boricua badass, but that's me.
Yeah, I don't know where this is going with them, but as long as they don't break up this team, I'll be happy. I'm kind of hoping that what we're going to get is basically Danny and Jody were kind of like the young teen punk rockers before. They're wild, they're crazy, they're dangerous and all that stuff, but they have like no focus or anything, no real like control. And now with this kind of guidance from a aged, experienced punk rocker, they can now turn into like more of the like adult punk rock who is a little more reserved, but if you make them let loose, they're gonna just beat the snot out of you. And so I think we could see kind of an evolution and maturity of Spitfire. That being said, like I always say every week, we need more of this division. And I will say, I'm not saying I'm hoping it's happening, but if we are seeing a combination of TNA, NXT, all that kind of stuff, one of the biggest things about NXT is they have one of the biggest women's rosters and one of the best used women's rosters in professional wrestling. So if we're looking to build up that division, that's definitely a good place to get it from. But yeah, I mean, I love both of these two. I'm a huge Danny Luna fan, and I think the two of them together are a great tag team. And I'd like to see them, back in that title picture.
Now that you mention it too, and as a side tangent to all this, I would really love to see Danny Luna versus Shotzi when Shotzi is healed. I think that'd be great. And on top of that too, even though she was just in TNA like not even a year and a half ago, I would love to see Miss Mia Yim revisit the dollhouse in TNA and kind of go up with some of the Jody versus Mia would be fantastic. But that's beside the point. I agree with you. I hope that now we're starting to see with Spitfire them starting as like these energetic punk rock teens and starting to evolve into the adolescent versions of a punk rocker where they still can channel that energy, but they go about it in a smarter way and are more proactive than reactive is the phrase I always like to use when it comes to these developments. But we move from here. We just ended TNA with two banger matches, in my opinion, because next we get Mustafa Ali versus Leon Slater. Look, I've become a big fan of Leon since seeing him, and, he's been signed here. But man, this is a match that definitely showcased both Ali and Leon. This was such a good, this was such a good match. And I was like, yeah, I need these two to run it back again. Because this was fantastic. And this was just to have a match. Can you imagine what they would pull out the bag if this was for the title? I'm like, Leon, Ali, we know is fantastic, but Leon, Leon, I'm putting him in the prodigy category because this kid has so much already in his arsenal. And I'm like, he out here looking better than most of the vets and across the board of with all these promotions. But this was definitely one of my top two matches of the evening.
Yeah, this was my match of the night until we got to the main event for just slight little things. I will say one of my favorite moments in this match was when they announced Ali during his entrance, and he's no longer Champagne Singh, he is Campaign Singh, which was phenomenal play on words there with his name. But Ali is on this run of just like making his opponents shine even more than they already do. Slater is phenomenal, especially when you consider he's 19. If he was 29 and wrestling like this and had had that much experience, he'd still be phenomenal. But the fact that he's 19 and doing this stuff is insane. He's just going to get better. He's going to, bulk up a little bit. He's going to round out as a wrestler, and it's going to be phenomenal. That modified electric chair drop that Ali hit on him out of the corner was crazy. And you said it, like, there was a moment in this match when I was like, is this for the title? Because this feels like this could be a title match. Like, they could have made this for the title and I would have been okay with it. But yeah, watching this was watching a rookie. Well, it's hard to call him a rookie because he's 19. He's been wrestling for like 10 years basically. But like, someone who's so young in his career and just in life in general that shines go up against a veteran who is just so good at what he does that he just elevates those that he does it with. And to watch the two of them together was exactly what you want to see in professional wrestling. So it was awesome to get to see this match. It was one of those things where it was like, didn't think about having this match, but I'm so glad that we got it.
Yeah, and surprisingly, as much as we know that Ali likes to use his Secret Service, I was actually really happy that he just relied on being more vicious to pick up the win too, because he beat Leon pretty much clean. He did beat him clean. That splash is it. I never get tired of seeing it from Ali. And then when he finishes it and pins him, he does the kip up with and does the hair. I'm just finally happy to see Ali get the respect and finally get his flowers. I'm happy that TNA has given him the ability to do what he's been doing with this character, because Ali is the definition of patience is a virtue and good things come to those who wait. Because as we know, Ali has had lots of up and downs where he was previously located at, and he finally gets to shine here and have the creative control that he gets to be able to. And again, TNA I think does a really good job of allowing their wrestlers to have such creative control over their characters. Learned this when I interviewed Ash, and that's why she signed with TNA. It's because Tommy and Gail have a vision for each individual wrestlers, but they allow them to come to them with ideas and they work together to give them the creative ability to do what they want to with their characters. Spoiler alert, go check out the interview. It was so much fun.
I will say it reminds me kind of, it's like Ali got to do his version of what Matt Cardona got to do.
Yeah.
Like, left the big company, went and worked for a small but not independent company, TNA, because it was Impact then, but still same idea. But then still got to go work on all these other indie promotions or smaller promotions and things like that. But strung the character together across all of that and made it their own, that they have blown up to something that they probably would have never been allowed to do working for that big company where they had more exposure. They took all of the little things that they got to put together and have made it into something great. And it's awesome to see because it just shows you that they had that potential the whole time. You just had to let them do it their way.
Well, on top of that, it also speaks volumes to how TNA treats not only their full-time roster, but we still haven't heard anything of Ali signing completely to TNA.
Yeah.
And the fact that he only initially agreed to just be here until the middle of March, we are about to be in June, which means to tell me that even though he hasn't signed a full-time deal, Ali feels I don't know if safe is the word, but TNA does a great job of allowing wrestlers to just come in and do what they want to do and allow them to just breathe. It's such a beautiful thing. And it's the same thing because I thought Steph would be out of here after she finished
Hmm.
up her program with Jordan, but she's still sticking around. And
Yeah.
now she's entered this weird thing with PCO. It's just it's fantastic for sure. But we move on from this match. We get a quick backstage segment. Moose is still looking for Broken Matt Hardy. He threatens a stagehand or somebody who works there, and he continues to go looking for him. And then we get the bumpers for next Thursday. So we got a couple of matches. The one I am most anticipating is just like, oh yeah, Jordan Grace is just gonna casually defend her title against Allison Kay of the Hex. I was just like, oh, this is going bang. like I I really enjoyed Jordan versus Marty. I'm excited for Allison versus Jordan. This is gonna be fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the matches we're getting next week. TNA knows how to build it, but then strap in Andrew because my match of the night is happening next. In our main event for this episode of TNA, we get Eddie Edwards versus Joe Hendry. You know what? I need to stop doubting Eddie because I keep forgetting how long he's been in this business, yet
Yeah.
he continues to show how he's so good. My God, Joe Hendry shined in this match too. This was a phenomenal main event. And what even solidified it as my match of the night is the fact that Joe Hendry won.
Yeah.
Which Will made sure to let me know that he was super happy when he was watching this earlier. But my God, Andrew, what a main event. Like, this is how, even though I consider Joe Hendry a vet, this is what happens when you let two vets go in the ring and they just put on a show. This was art to me.
Yeah, I mean, this was awesome. It was, seeing Joe, he looks like he like trimmed down, like he was more chiseled, a little lighter looking, and like some of the power displays he showed against someone the size of Eddie Edwards, that stalling suplex that he hit, multiple fall away slams. It was just such an awesome match. They worked so well together. And it's great because even though Joe Hendry is kind of a comedic character, especially like before the match, in the ring he's such a like powerhouse and technical wrestler. And Eddie Edwards is the same way. Like you said, he's been doing this for so long. He's gone through so many iterations of his character. And we see it. We see him in singles matches and when he wrestles with Brian Myers, like the two of them. Every time I see them, I see them wrestle as a tag team, and I'm just like, oh yeah, these guys are really good at what they do, and they're really good at doing it together. And so it's a treat to see both him in singles and tag team. I love the fact that we got to see, you know, the setup with the system, and then the Nemeth brothers came out to kind of back him up. But it was nice because it always bothers me when like the heels are just to outnumber the faces, and it was good that they used the storyline that's going on to have some backup for them, which also made me go, I kind of would be down for a Joe Hendry and Nemeth like faction, especially because they're all these like platinum blondes, or bottled blondes. But it was nice that they had them there because essentially what it meant was the system still did what made sense. They were there to like back each other up, but by having the Nemeths there, what it meant was we didn't have any shenanigans really. It just kept them out of it. So we got to see Edwards and Hendry just wrestle each other, and it was so good. They were just throwing everything at each other. They were telling the story right. This was my match of the night too, and it was because it had everything in it, and it was that nice mixture of they were telling me the story while also showing it to me, and it furthered the other stories that were happening too. And top it off, Joe Hendry won, so that makes me happy because we've kind of seen him kind of go back and forth between wins and losses. I'm really hoping, for me, my two big people are Joe Hendry and Jake Something, that I feel like I want to see them get some focus to where they're going to be kind of going, and their drive to that point. I think there's some options with Jake Something. If AJ Francis does win the digital media title, like I think reigniting that feud between Hendry and AJ Francis at some point wouldn't be bad to have them, feud over that title and maybe give Joe another run with that title. But yeah, this match, it was just so entertaining. It was just a really good way to end this night of matches and a show.
It definitely was. So Joe Hendry picks up the victory, which makes all of us here at the Takedown Troop super happy. But that's not how we went off the air this week, because we ended TNA. Moose finally catches up to Broken Matt Hardy. They have a brawl, and Moose does the thing he did to Nick Nemeth and tried to do to Ryan Nemeth. He puts the chair on Matt Hardy's neck, and Moose not only hits the chair with another steel chair, not once, but twice, leaving Matt Hardy on the floor as TNA goes off the air. Now, do we think that Broken Matt Hardy is now going to be out of the title picture at Against All Odds is the big question mark. I want to say maybe, but you never know.
Yeah, that was my question too. Like, seeing this happen, it's interesting that they had Moose kind of go off on this to look for Hardy on his own. I like that we went off with this promo and it is continuing another part of the story. But I feel like, Moose definitely made Matt Hardy live up to Broken Matt Hardy's, moniker now. And I kind of wonder if this was a setup to be able to pivot away from the Matt Hardy versus Moose match. I know not everyone may be cheering for that matchup, but it kind of made sense because I don't feel like Matt Hardy's here for the long haul. I feel like having him wrestle this match was a chance to get him in, get another match in TNA, get a big name for Moose to defend his title against, and then have Matt Hardy kind of move on to other things. But who knows? Maybe there's something going on with Matt. Maybe there's just other plans. Maybe it was always the plan. But especially with these crossovers and, the proverbial portal or whatever it's going to be called, maybe we'll get a crazy replacement for Matt Hardy to face off against Moose. So, never know.
Oh my gosh, that would be fantastic. Yeah. People want to see Obafemi and Moose go at it. I was just like, I'm not going to lie, that would be a fantastic match. But honestly, if I'm going to be honest, like, I think that would be a good Haas match. Now, if we want to talk like wrestling, because we know how Moose can pull out things, and he's also very athletic for a very big guy. This is always going to be my default answer, and I don't care. For those of you who watch the NXT review, you know who I'm the biggest fan of. But Wesley versus Moose would actually be very fantastic as well.
I mean, if you want to blow people's minds, especially if it's someone who's willing to lose, but to come back for something big, just to have, like, you want to make this one of your most exciting and, like, probably watched shows since TNA's return, at least. You have Matt Hardy not able to wrestle. You could even build it up to that point where it's not sure. And then right beforehand, you announce that Matt Hardy is being replaced by AJ Styles.
Yes. I think that would be fantastic. And that was the name at the top of my list once we got this announcement that TNA and NXT are looking to cross promote. Man, what a way for AJ Styles to retire, like have a final year of wrestling, being able to go back and forth between, the company that he always wanted to get to with WWE, but also being able to go back to where pretty much he gained superstar status with the United States audience, because he was one of the foundations of the original TNA. But we shall see what happens with all that. So let's get into the final ratings, the final empanada ratings for this week's TNA. I was very happy with this episode of TNA, as I always am. Again, a little bias might be showing because it's the one show that consistently makes me happy with wrestling. My second show would actually be AEW Collision, which is kind of crazy to say out loud, but Collision to me is the better of the three AEW shows. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 TNA. I really enjoyed this. Leon versus Ali and the main event with Hendry versus Edwards definitely were definitely factored into that high of a score. But honestly, outside of maybe Sammy and Jonathan, just because of the execution of the ink, which still wasn't a bad match, I enjoyed everything we got from the backstage to the matches, so I give this an 8 out of 10. I had a good time watching this episode.
I gave it a 7.6, so It was basically like a C for me. It was an entertaining but an unmemorable card for the most part. It started off with a really good match and ended with several really, really good matches. I would say all the way from Macklin and Santana through the end of the show, the matches were phenomenal. But everything else in the middle of all that stuff was just kind of meh. Didn't do it for me, or I just thought it was not well executed. That being said, I've only watched two promotions this week. I have another one to watch this weekend, but so far this week, I've only watched two, and this one was about 2 points higher than, than the last one I watched. So while it was only a 7.6, it was the best card I watched this week.
Yeah, I'm going to be completely honest. My score for Collision after me and Adolfo review it might be a little skewed based on, since I was there for the actual taping, which is kind
Yeah.
of crazy. But I'm excited. Andrew, thank you so much for being here tonight. And, hopefully next week, all three of us will be able to review it because you will not be here for the go home show or Against All Odds. So it's just going to be me and Will. But as I stated during last week's show, we are going to have our own special crossover event where we are going to get JVL, one of the hosts from AEW Dynamite and Ring of Honor, to tag in for Andrew. And me and Will are, honestly, I think Against All Odds will definitely be a better place for him to jump into, because that one TNA episode was not great. And I even agreed with that as someone who reviews this thing on a weekly basis. But me and Andrew got to get up on out of here. We are 2 weeks away from Against All Odds, so this is going to be interesting. And next week, me and Will be covering Jordan's match against Roxanne, and who knows who's going to be showing up from NXT at Against All Odds too, according to the reports. But from me and Andrew, Will, and the rest of the BC Wrestle Pod boys, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, stay Bi-Conic, but more importantly than anything, you always deserve to finish your story. We'll catch you next week for another TNA Takedown Trip review. But until then, ta-ta for now.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another Vibe Tribe production. What's going to happen next time? Well, you're going to have to tune in to find out. But until then, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, and as always, make sure that you keep the good times rolling. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.